Good morning, everyone. We will wait for 1-2 minutes and then we will start with our today's session.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Okay, so good morning, one and all. We will start with our today's session on corporate governance. During our last lecture, we had discussed the corporate governance practices or code of corporate governance in South African companies. So today we will be taking up the final country which we are supposed to discuss as per our curriculum, and that country is called as Singapore. So Singapore, the code of corporate governance in Singapore, we will be discussing in today's session. The code of corporate governance in Singapore first came into effect on 1st January 2003. So on this particular date, this code was set up by the Singapore government for all the listed companies in Singapore, and it became essential for the listed companies in Singapore to follow this code of corporate governance since 2003. Recently, in the year 2018, certain changes were made in this existing code of corporate governance. And from August 2018, it was expected that all the companies which are working in Singapore need to follow these new, or we can say refined, codes of corporate governance. Now, yesterday we were discussing that the South African companies or the Australian uh, code of conduct, code of corporate governance, it is based on certain principles. So similarly, here in Singapore also, the code of corporate governance is based on 13 basic principles of corporate governance. So the basic aim of having this code, which is given by the government of Singapore, is that this code will help the company to come up with good corporate governance practices, and this will help the company in the future growth. That is the basic aim of corporate governance. Now, this particular code of corporate governance is based on a concept in Singapore which is called as comply or explain concept. Comply means we had discussed in Indian companies context also that comply means that whatever rules are formed under various laws are to be followed as it is by the companies or by the organizations. So that is called as following the rule or following the law is called as compliance. So whatever is expected, suppose if it is expected that the company should file a financial statement in a government office on a particular date in a particular manner, then that particular organization should file a financial statement in that particular format on that particular date only or before that particular date, and that will be called as complying with the rule of law. So that is compliance. So this particular concept of code of governance in Singapore, it is based on comply or explain. So comply we have discussed now, and explain means if you are unable to comply, you have to give a reason why you failed to comply with a reason, uh, uh, with a reason of failure of compliance. So that is called as comply or explain. If you fail to comply with certain rules, follow certain rule, you need to give a written explanation with a valid reason to the government that why you were unable to follow that particular rule, why you missed that particular rule. So that is called as comply or explain concept. Now they have given 13 principles. So we will be discussing quickly those 13 principles. These are very much similar, so we will not take much time on discussing these principles. So first principle is based on the board matters principle on board matters. And under this principle, it is expected that the company should be headed by an effective board which is collectively responsible and works with management for the long-term success of the company. So the principle under board matter, it is expected that there has to be an effective board of every listed company. Now, what effective board is, that we had discussed in our last lectures when we were discussing South African companies and Australian companies as well as UK companies and Indian companies. So effective board, the first principle we have already discussed, so we will not go into detail of what effective board is. Now the second, we will immediately go to the second principle. Second principle is related to board composition and guidance. Now under this principle, it is expected that board has an appropriate level of independence and diversity. So that also we had discussed, that board should be independent. It should be consisting of not only the executive directors, but most of the directors who are part of the board of a company should consist of non-executive or independent directors. If more independent directors are included in the board, we can expect more independence in their authorities, more independence in their decisions also. So same thing is expected in principle number 2, second principle, which is consisting or which is related to board composition and guidance. They have mentioned very clearly how the board is to be constituted. In this principle, it is also mentioned that the number of independence director should always be more than the number of executive directors. And under guidance, the government has given certain guiding principles also, which should be followed while composing or while including the board of directors. Now the next principle or third principle is related to chairman and chief executive officer. So under this principle, it is expected that there should be a clear division of responsibilities between the leadership of the board and management, and no one individual should have unfettered powers of decision making. Unfettered powers means too many powers or too much of powers, or we can say that he is the only person who is having all the powers. All the powers in one person is unfettered. Power, unlimited power, we can say, is unfettered. So, under this principle of chairman and chief executive officer, it is expected that there has to be a clear division of responsibilities between the person who will be leading the board, that is chairman of the board of directors, as well as the person who will be leading the management of the company, that means the MD or CEO of the organization. It is expected under this principle that the responsibilities, the authorities, and the powers of these two key positions are to be finalized by the board, and it should be conveyed or communicated to both the positions in a written form, that what their duties, responsibilities, and authorities will be. So the chairman is aware of his duties, responsibilities, and authorities, as well as the CEO is also aware of his authorities and responsibilities. Now, this principle expects that if separation of power or division of power is clear and transparent and fair, then it will help the company's board in coming out with decisions where most of the board members will be part of that particular decision. It will not happen that only one person is taking the decision. If there is division of responsibilities, if there is no division of responsibility, it may happen that the person who is chairman of the board of directors can be the chairman of the or the CEO of the company also. If one person is assuming both the roles, is donning both the caps, then we can say that there are more chances that only one person will be involved in decision. So to curb this practice, the third principle of Code of Corporate Governance in Singapore clearly lays down that there has to be separation of power between the chairman and the chief executive officer. Now, the next principle or fourth principle is related to board membership. Now, this principle expects that board should have a formal, transparent process for the appointment and reappointment of directors, taking account into taking into account the need for progressive renewal of the board. So the fourth principle on board membership expects that the company should have a transparent process, that the company's board should have transparent process, that how the company will be appointing its independent and executive directors, what will be the procedure, what will be the qualifications, experience, and expertise which will help a person to be included in the board of directors of that particular company. So that is principle number 4 under board membership. Now here they have mentioned very clearly under board membership itself that the board should appoint a nomination committee. Now this particular nomination committee is responsible for conducting interviews and for going through with the applicants' qualification and experience when they will be taking these experts as independent directors to their company's board of directors. As well as nomination committee is responsible for finalizing the evaluation criteria as well. So nomination committee plays a very important role here. Nomination committee first sets up the criteria for selection in the company's board, as well as it also sets up the criteria that how once a person is included in the company's board of director, how his or her performance will be evaluated by the company. So that is under principle number 4, board governance or board performance. Now principle number 5 is related to the board performance. So earlier we had discussed board constitution, now board performance. Now under this, the board undertakes formal annual assessment of its effectiveness as a whole and that of each of its board and committee members. So here in board performance, as we have been discussing this for the last 3-4 lectures, that once a person is included as director in the board, it is expected that he should perform on the board, and whether the director who is included in the board of directors is performing or not can be checked with his performance. So it is expected under 5th principle of board performance that board should conduct an annual assessment of its effectiveness of the board as a whole, as well as there has to be assessment of performance of each and every director and each and every committee member which are constituted by the board. So annual appraisal should be there. Now principle number 6 is related to remuneration matters. Now under remuneration matter, this principle expects that the board should have a formal and transparent procedure for developing policies of on director and executive remuneration, as well as for fixing the remuneration packages of individual directors and key management personnel. Here it is expected that it should not happen that a director himself or herself is finalizing his or her remuneration. So remuneration is to be finalized by the board with the help of remuneration committee constituted by the board of directors. So under the 6th principle of remuneration matter, it is expected that the board of directors of the company should constitute a subcommittee called as remuneration committee. This remuneration committee will help in finalizing the packages or remuneration of the directors of the board, as well as the executive directors and the packages of key managerial or key management personnels. Now they have mentioned how the board is to be constituted or how this committee, remuneration committee, is to be constituted. Under this, it is expected that the remuneration committee should consist of 3 directors, and the chairman of this committee, which is called as remuneration committee, should be an independent director who will be finalizing the remuneration packages of executive directors, independent directors, as well as key managerial positions. So that was principle number 6. Now principle number 7 is related to the level and mix remuneration. Now, this again is related to the packages being given or being finalized for executive directors or independent directors and key managerial personnel. Now, under this principle of level and mix of remuneration, it is expected that the level and structure of remuneration of the board and key managerial personnel are based on their sustained performance and value creation of the company. So here it is expected that suppose if an independent director is appointed for 3 years on a particular package, so it should not happen that even if that particular director is not performing, that director will be awarded same remuneration for a period of 3 years. So under this seventh principle, it is based on that the remuneration given to a director should be in tune or in relation or in comparison with the value creation for the company. What value he is creating for the company, that should decide whether the person's remuneration should be increased or his remuneration should be decreased. So that is a very important provision or very important principle included in this, in the Code of Corporate Governance of Singapore. Now the next code is related to disclosure on remuneration. Now, under this principle of disclosure on remuneration, it is expected that the company should be transparent on its remuneration policies, level and mix of remuneration, the procedure of setting remuneration, and the relationship between remuneration, performance, and value creation. So, among the 13 principles, 3 to 4 principles are related to remuneration only. And again, the Code of Corporate Governance in Singapore is emphasizing on the performance and remuneration relationship. That remuneration should be based on performance. And under the eighth principle, it is very clear that the company should make a disclosure. That disclosure should be transparent, which should disclose that what is the remuneration package being given to the directors as well as the key management personnel or key managerial personnel. What are the policies followed by the board while deciding their remuneration, as well as how they are evaluating their performance and comparing with their performance in the organization. So everything is to be disclosed so that not only the board, the company as well as the shareholders will also come to know about the performance of the board as a whole, as well as the performance of individual directors and the performance of the key management personnel. So it is expected that in the annual report of the company, the policy, remuneration policy, the evaluation criterias, as well as the performance of the individual director and the key managerial positions should be mentioned clearly and in a easy manner, which can be understood by a common man, that the name of the person, designation of the person, remuneration of the person, evaluation criteria of the person, and the performance of the person. these people. That first it will be, say, chairman of the board, his name, his designation, his remuneration package, then how his performance was evaluated, and what is the end result of his performance. Similarly, all the remaining 7 will also be listed in their names, their designation, their evaluation criteria, their remuneration, and their performance will be listed in the uh, disclosure on remuneration. So it is considered as one of the very important principle of code of corporate governance. Now the next code of corporate governance is related to accountability and audit. Now under this principle, or principle number 9, it is expected that the board should be responsible for the governance of risk and ensure that management maintains a sound system of risk management and internal control to safeguard the interest of the company and the shareholders. So that is the principle related to accountability and audit. Now this principle is based on risk management and internal control, that the board should be able to foresee any risk which will be there for the company in the future, and if they are able to foresee the risk, how they will be taking on that particular risk in future. So that particular procedure, that particular strategy is to be prepared by the board, and that is expected in principle number 9 related to accountability and audit, and which is based on risk management and internal control. Now the next principle next principle is related to the shareholders rights and engagements. Just a moment, we have missed the 10th principle, and the 10th principle is related to audit committee. So ninth principle we have discussed, related to, it was related to risk management and internal control, and the 10th principle is related to audit committee. Now here, under this principle of audit committee, the board should have an audit committee which should be independent, which should not be controlled by the management of the company. It should work independently, and it should directly report to the board of directors of the company. It is expected that if it is working under the management of the company, it may not work effectively or may not work independently, as it is controlled or constituted by the management of the company. So it is expected that the audit committee should be independent committee. It should be uh, it should be led by an independent director, and it should report only to the board of directors. Now the next principle is related to shareholders rights and engagements. Principle number 11 is related to shareholders rights and engagement. Under this, it is expected, in order to enable them exercise their rights and have the opportunity to communicate their views on matters affecting the principle of shareholders rights and engagement. It is expected that the rights of the shareholders should be communicated to the shareholders. It can be communicated on the website of the company, so that the shareholders will come to know about their rights. This is one part of this principle related to shareholders right and engagement. Now, rights are one part. It should be communicated to the shareholders that these are your rights, as well as they should be actively engaged in the company as well. At the time of annual general board meeting or any other meeting, the company should try to engage the shareholders also by giving them an opportunity to come up with their views, come up with their suggestions, which they feel will be beneficial for the company. And the company, if the views or if the suggestions are felt by the board that yes, the suggestions are good and can be implemented, then those suggestions should be implemented, and the name of the person should be highlighted who has given those suggestions. So that will help to engage more and more shareholders in the functioning of the company. So that is expected under principle number 11 related to shareholders rights and engagement. How they should be knowing their rights, as well as they should be knowing that they can they can share their views, they can share their ideas, they can share their suggestions on company matters with the board of the company directly. So that comes under shareholders right and engagement. Now the next principle is related to, or principle number 12 is related to engagement with shareholders. How they can how the company or board of directors can directly get engaged with the shareholders. That is the principle number 12, which expects that company communicates regularly with its shareholders and facilitates participation of shareholders during general meetings and other dialogues to allow shareholders to communicate their views which affects the company. So it is very much in tune with the earlier principle, and it is mentioned here that how and when and where they can communicate with the company. It is expected that when general meetings are held, they can put forth their views or suggestions, as well as when the company is calling for a special meeting, they can suggest their views. Now the next principle is related to managing stakeholders relationship, or principle number 13 is related to managing stakeholders relationship and engagement with stakeholders. Now principle number 12 was related to the shareholders only. Now here we are not talking about only shareholders. Now here we will be discussing about the stakeholders. Now stakeholders, we all know and we have been discussing that what is a stakeholder and who are the stakeholders. So here not only shareholders will be called as the stakeholders, but here we can say the employees of the company will also be the shareholders, who will also be included as the stakeholders of that particular company. The client of the company will also be considered under the stakeholders of the company. So all the people who comes with the direct contact or indirect contact of the company will can be covered under the concept called as stakeholders. Now here it is expected that the board should adopt an approach by considering the needs and interest of all these stakeholders. as part of its overall responsibility to ensure that the best interest of the company are served. So it is expected under this principle of managing stakeholders relationship that if the relationships, or it is the prime responsibility of the board of directors, that they need to ensure that the board of the company need to ensure that the relationships between the board or between the company and all the stakeholders can be the employees of the organization, clients of the organization, customers of the organization, and shareholders of the organization. All these stakeholders should have a sound relationship, good relationship, because it is expected that if the relationships of the company with all the stakeholders is good or are good, then we can expect less number of grievances or less number of complaints from these stakeholders. And if less number of grievances or complaints are there from clients or from customers or from shareholders or from employees of the organization, we can expect that it will directly reflect in the satisfaction of stakeholders. That if we are getting less complaints or grievances from the stakeholders, we can assume that most of our stakeholders are satisfied with the guidelines of the company, or with the code of corporate governance of the company, as well as with the performance of the company, with the the procedures or strategies of the company, or the communication of the company. So this is all about the code of corporate governance in Singapore. So all the four countries which were expected to be discussed, that how the code of corporate governance is being implemented in these countries, that we have completed now. And tomorrow or on Monday, when we will be meeting, then we will be talking about the next concept, which is called as risk management and internal control.